we're interested in studying is what information do they actually share.
Is that the dilemma that is behind one of the other very interesting quotes that I found on your website, which was, biological systems are often more noisy than engineered ones. However, they typically surpass artificial systems in their robustness to a wide variety of adversities.
Yeah, absolutely. So individual ants for sure make mistakes. You know, they recruit to the wrong thing, or they forget where they were. And we don't necessarily know in detail why these failures happen. But if ants were just walking around randomly, that would be robust but not very efficient. If the ants were always doing these systematic searches, that would be efficient, but it wouldn't be very robust. It would quickly become inefficient if you make any kind of error.
Yeah.
And so we think that the meandering is just such a strategy that compromises between robustness and efficiency, and therefore achieves both.
This is an odd association, but have you ever seen the movie Alien?
Yeah, with Sigourney Weaver.
Yes. Am I
A long time ago.
I just had this thought as you were describing that movie is sort of about the degree to which the human brain rejects this ant or social insect type of thinking. Because if you think about it, that movie is about this group of people who have been sent out into space to recover some compound and bring it back. They don't really know what the compound is or why they've been sent to retrieve it. And then on their way back, they get this message from a disembodied entity that they refer to, I think, as Mother, that has given them an order that says, nope, you've been redirected, you have to go over to this other planet and bring back this species that actually wants to kill all of you. But it's more important to our interests as a broader colony to understand this thing than it is for you guys to survive. And they rebel against that, and they kill the thing that they're supposed to bring back for greater understanding. And if I'm understanding correctly, if we imagine a version of the movie Alien where all the characters are ants, they would have very willingly brought this thing back, even if it was going to kill all of them, because they would have had just this basic understanding that, like, it's better for the colony in the long term for this thing to come back. Ours is not to wonder why.
That's right. And we don't really know if they wonder why or not, or if they know why, but yeah, in a literal sense, value the success of the colony over their own life or their own success. Humans often get a little depressed when I say they're not as altruistic as ants or bees are, but I actually think that's the wrong way to think about it. I think we are, in fact, from a biologist's point of view, already incredibly altruistic, surprisingly close to social insects. Compared to chimpanzees, for example, or many other animals, even those that do live in groups, humans are quite willing even to sacrifice life and limb, but certainly to invest in small and large ways in the communal good.
Right.
And so anthropologists debate why this is the case. Many biologists argue it has to do with the fact that we evolved in small groups of probably mostly related individuals. So in some ways, our brain is probably constructed to expect that most of the people immediately around us are our relatives, which we have some even biological interest in helping. So whatever the reason is, humans are actually quite willing to even pay fairly high costs to ensure the success of the group as a whole.
Right. And that's
what luxury notwithstanding.
Right. for all the bag of chips guys out there, there's more roast chicken people.
Yes, there are a surprising number of roast chicken people. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the concept of potluck, right?
Right.
Otherwise, we would just say, bring a roast chicken or stay home.
Well, Professor Anna Dornhaus, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm never going to look at an anthill the same way ever again.
Okay, wonderful.
Is the show. And you're listening to 91.5 and KJZZ.org. Thank you for spending part of your day with here and now coming up at 10. 12:30 brings Today Explained. On our way to a high of 70 today in Phoenix. It's 55 degrees right now at 9:53.
KJZZ is supported by the USS Arizona Memorial Gardens at Salt River, a place to honor the lives lost from the attack on Pearl Harbor. You can pay tribute this Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, December 7th at 10 a.m. USSArizonaSaltRiver.com.
Good morning. It is the show here on KJZZ 91.5. I'm Lauren Gilger.
And I'm Mark Brody. Joe Daunt has loved guitar ever since he started playing when he was 10. A few years later, after buying and selling a guitar for the first time, Daunt realized something. He could play as many rare vintage guitars as he wanted if he bought and sold them. With a business degree and a love for old instruments, Daunt founded Joe's Vintage Guitars. Now he earns a living shopping for, refurbishing, and selling guitars. He wouldn't give away too much about how he finds guitars, but he's traveled as far as Kentucky and West Virginia to pick up gear and instruments. He's built up quite the collection. Daunt runs his business out of a small warehouse in Mesa. The one-story gray building on Stapley in Maine doesn't have any signs indicating what's on the inside. That's by design. You can only look at Daunt's vintage guitars online or by appointment. The main workspace holds a few hundred guitars. The walls are lined with shelves holding rows of guitars and glass cases with guitar pedals and other gear. Most of the floor space is taken up by a maze of amps and guitar cases stacked on top of each other. The show's Amber Victoria Singer met up with Daunt in a cozy corner of his warehouse where he showed off a few of his favorite pieces.
My name is Joe Daunt. I'm 29 years old and I'm a vintage guitar dealer. I probably have in the neighborhood of 500 to 700 right now. I started selling guitars when the first one was probably when I was 14, when I purchased an instrument for myself and then sold it on the open market and kind of realized there was a potential there to make some profit. And from then on out, I used it as an opportunity to try all kinds of gear out, things that I enjoyed, acquire guitars that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. 698 guitars at once was the most we ever bought. And we've done 300, 100, 40, and sometimes I'll drive across the country for one guitar, if it's the right guitar. The farthest I've ever gone was to Maine. I think the most expensive single guitar I've ever sold, it was a 1954 Strat in factory blonde finish that I got $69,000 for. So this guitar is really cool. This is a 1971 Fender Mustang, and the finish is called Competition Blue. The competition is actually talking about a little racing stripe on the corner. The cool thing about this guitar is that it was made in 1971, and if you look at the sticker right here inside the case, it says Milano Music Center, Mesa, Arizona. So this was bought new in 1971 at Milano Music, which is like 2 miles down the street. These were marketed towards kids at the time, actually, so this would have been like a Christmas present for someone or like a starter guitar, but they've kind of obtained a following because they are actually quite well made and really cool looking guitars. So this one is a 1959 Gibson case. It's got the brown leather exterior and it's got the pink interior. It's funny you ask about the case. This is actually my favorite type of case. I just think that brown and pink looks so good, and it's very iconically Gibson because for the 50s to have a bright neon pink interior for a case was a little out of left field. As for the guitar in the case, this is a 1959 Gibson ES 355. ES stands for Electric Spanish Guitar because back then steel guitars were popular with the slide, so you had to differentiate, and the steel guitar was called a electric or a steel guitar, and you had to say Spanish guitar when it had frets. The number initially, this changed over time, but initially the number was how much it cost. So in theory, an ES 355 would have cost $355 back in the day. Okay, this guitar is a 1966 Fender Stratocaster. It's a standard sunburst finish. This guitar, in really nice condition, is probably worth about 15 grand. Just has a great sound. It's super well worn in. You can tell it's been played a lot. And there's kind of an old adage in the guitar world that the good ones got played a lot. So if you see a super worn in one, it's good sounding and playing guitar. So this is a lap steel guitar, kind of known for that Hawaiian sound, or if you've ever seen SpongeBob, you'll hear a lot of this in SpongeBob. They don't sell that well because not that many people like them or play them, but I kind of have a little bit of a illogical obsession with them. But this is actually a Rickenbacker, really early 1930s Rickenbacker, but it's rebranded Mary Stephen, probably for sale at some department store that wanted to rename it or whatever. But this has a all Bakelite body. It's all one piece of molded Bakelite, and it's got that very cool. Normally they would color these, make them black or whatever, but the cool thing about this one is they kind of just kept that natural Bakelite brown. You want me to play it or no?
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I don't want to say no to that.
All right, I'll play it a little bit.
That was Joe Daunt of Joe's Vintage Guitars.
All right, and that'll do it for this Monday edition of the show. Be sure to join us tomorrow morning with much more as always. And don't forget, you can follow us on Instagram. We are at KJZZ The Show. For Mark Brody, I'm Lauren Bilger. Thanks for joining us.
And here and now, coming up next, right here on member-supported KJZZ FM Phoenix and HD, a service of the Maricopa Community Colleges.
KJZZ is supported by SRP, working to deliver reliable, sustainable water and power to meet the evolving needs of the Valley now and for the next 100 years. You can discover how SRP is moving forward at srp.net/future.
Sunny skies, high near 70 degrees on this Monday. It is 55 right now at 10 o'clock.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. About 1 in 5 Americans says they regularly get their news from social media influencers. That's one of several key findings from the Pew Research Center. Another is that influencers are most likely to be found on X and to a lesser degree on Instagram and YouTube. In the wake of the recent presidential election, slightly more news influencers identified as Republican, conservative, or pro-Trump than they did Democratic, liberal, or pro-Harris. And the study finds a clear majority of news influencers are men. In less than 2 weeks since his win, President-elect Trump's announced more than 30 appointments and nominations for his administration. NPR's Luke Garrick says the Republicans' latest big signal, this is not 2016 Trump.
Trump has picked a cabinet before, and he's doing it quickly. And there are two key principles that are leading his, decision-making as he picks those he wants to surround himself with.